Welcome back, everybody, to the Trade Meet Global podcast, where real stories of real entrepreneurs remind us that success is never a straight line. I'm your host, Tom Bartow, and today we're diving into the remarkable journey of a man whose name is known all over the world, but whose story is far less understood. This is the journey of a man who failed 3 separate times, went bankrupt, started over again and again, and still found a way to build one of the most recognizable brands in history. But before we get to that, I'll just give you my regular update like I usually do. So for those of you who have listened to previous episodes, you know that I am a long-haul truck driver, and I usually record this podcast, well, at least lately, while I'm in my truck in the sleeper section of the truck. Now, sometimes I'll record it when I'm on a break at home, but by accident, I found out that the audio seems to turn out better while I'm in the sleeper area of the of my semi truck. And there's curtains that separate the sleeper area from the actual front. The front section of the cab. Where the driver seats and the passenger seat are. So you've got curtains that block the actual windshield, if you want. Yeah, but there's also another curtain that separates the front of the cab from the sleeper area. So for those of you who aren't familiar with it, but so if I pull that curtain just for the sake of having privacy while being parked somewhere, I found out it's by accident. Actually, the audio turned out better, and I looked it up, and it turns out that just because of the way the walls are padded in the sleeper area, and of course with the curtain and all that, and you've got the bedding, with the sheets and blanket and all that stuff absorbs sound pretty well. And of course it's usually pretty dark. I mean, if you just turn the lights off, and I guess that's supposed to affect the sound quality. I think. I don't know. I'm not a professional podcaster, so I'm just a regular guy. As you can see, I'm as you can hear, being a truck driver, but also I'm interested in business. I love talking about this. That's why I'm doing this. People that know me personally know I could talk quite a bit because and especially about these subjects, because I'm very interested. And I'm very interested in all stories that have to do with success. It could be athletics, could be business, could be art, a lot of things, any kind of profession, anything. So it's good to see people succeed. It's good to learn about success. I just happen to be building a business myself with a few people, and that's part of this journey. This podcast. I thought, hey, this is a great way to get the word out, and also to talk about things that I love talking about, and that's business. So why not do what you love, right? So that's what I'm doing. You've probably heard, maybe if you heard some of the earlier episodes, please forgive us and forgive me on the sound quality on some of it. Like I said, I'm not a professional podcaster, but it's growing. So you're in a way you're witnessing the slow growth and improvement, of this business, this podcast business, but also it's associated with the internet platforms, because it's all about bringing business people together. Because that's what I learned. I really like to do. For those of you who don't know, just a quick summary. I've traveled to China many times. I got the bug to travel internationally because of that. My wife is Chinese, and that's why I was able to travel there and, got personally shown around, not as a tourist, but, by, just regular citizens there. So you get to see a different side of China when you're family, It's just fantastic. Well, I got the bug, and I began to see the differences in the culture, but then realizing those differences are very superficial, as in they're just surface level. In depth, when you get beyond the surface, we're all pretty much the same. We have similar goals and dreams. We just go about it in different ways. The cultural differences are just, they could be important cultural differences, but when you break it all down, you really see that at the heart of things, we're all very, very similar. It's just the cultural differences just dictate how we go about those things. Maybe it affects the things that are important to us and not important. Things like that. Well, what's insulting, what's not insulting, how to make people feel good, how to make them feel bad. Just those little things like that. But at its heart, We all want success. We all want a good life. We all would like to have good friends and good family and all that. So I got the bug. I love it. I thought, well, I'd love to do something. They say, do what you love. Well, I would love to build a business. That's what I thought back then. I said, I'm going to do it. And I said, trying to find what would I like to do? Well, I love getting people together and bridging those gaps. I found that to be very interesting and fulfilling. And so I thought, I'm going to get involved with the international business community and local business, anything about, building relationships. That's what I like. I was in sales for a little while as well before, but I like the consultative side of sales. I wasn't in that side of it tonight. I didn't enjoy just hardcore sales. Some people, they love it. They're good at it. I was meant for something, I think, a little bit different, more of the relationship building side of it. There's sales is all pretty much similar, but there's different types, and I was in car sales for a while, and that was a little bit too just, all about the sale and not so much about the people, even though they say it's supposed to be. So I got out of that, and now I'm driving a truck across the country, and it's pretty fascinating. But and it has to do with commerce and, of course, transportation, which I'm fascinated with as well. It's all part of it. Transportation, logistics, trade, international trade, all that, sales. I'm fascinated. So right now, as I like to usually give the update, where am I at right now? Once again, I'm at a spot that I stop off at quite a bit, and I am here at a familiar truck stop, a very nice truck stop that is in, right outside of Lake City, Florida. And it's a pretty decent place, has a nice restaurant and a nice secure parking area. It's gated, which is nice, and they have security, which is good. As I learned, though, the longer I'm on the road, I learned that that's a good thing. You hate to, go into the restaurant or, spend time in somewhere in the restaurant or going, you're falling asleep and you wake up and then you see some of your gas, some of your, not gas, your diesel fuel is missing. And you think, wait a minute, did it just settle in the tank? Or did somebody actually, get next to me and siphon some of that stuff out? And you hear from security in places, it happens. So anyways, it's an adventure. So I'm here right outside of Lake City, Florida, and I'm taking a break for the night, and I'm continuing on tomorrow morning to West Palm Beach, Florida. So when I'm done there, I'll be heading back, and I'll probably stop off here again on my way back to Knoxville, Tennessee. Well, actually, right outside of Knoxville, Tennessee, a city called Loudon. So, I just looked that up. It's a beautiful city, small, but it's a beautiful country area right outside of Knoxville, Tennessee, a beautiful mountainous area. So, okay, now continuing on with the story. And as I mentioned, what we're talking about is this story about failure and success, failing a few different times, and how this individual found a way to build one of the most recognizable brands in history, as I mentioned. And so today we're talking about Milton S. Hershey, the founder of Hershey Chocolate Company, the force behind the town of Hershey, Pennsylvania, that is, and one of America's greatest examples of determination, discipline, and heart. Okay, so let's begin. So now we'll start with his humble beginnings. So Milton Hershey was born in 1857 on a modest farm in rural Pennsylvania. His father, Henry Hershey, was a dreamer, full of ideas and ambitions, but rarely able to follow through on them. His mother, Fanny, was the opposite, strict, disciplined, and determined to keep Milton grounded. Milton's early years were unstable. The family moved often. His father's ventures failed. Money was always tight, and school never came easily to him. But one thing did stand out. Milton was curious, observant, and willing to work. At 14, his mother found him an apprenticeship with a local printer. It didn't last long. Milton hated the work. He found it tedious and uninspiring. After a mistake that jammed an expensive piece of equipment, he was fired. He could have been discouraged, but that failure was the beginning of the path that would define his life. So now moving on to him discovering a passion. After the failed printing apprenticeship, Milton's mother arranged another opportunity, this time with a local candy maker in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. This changed everything. For the first time, Milton discovered a trade he loved. Candy making wasn't just labor, it was creativity, craftsmanship, and science all blended together. He learned quickly, he experimented constantly, and he began to dream of owning his own shop. But dreams, as Milton would learn, require risk, and risk often leads to failure. So now let's move on to failure number 1, Philadelphia. So at just 18 years old, Milton moved to Philadelphia, a bustling city filled with opportunity. He opened his first candy shop using borrowed money and sheer determination, of course. For 6 years, he fought to make it work. He worked long hours. He crafted recipes. He delivered candy by hand. But the competition was overwhelming, and Milton lacked business experience. Eventually, the debts grew too large, and the shop collapsed. Now, he returned home after that. We're getting rid of that failure, right? That's failure right there. So, and that's good to always pay attention to these failures because that's part of the history. I like to interject there for a second because I like everyone, I like to pay attention to that kind of stuff. I'm actually fascinated with the failures because more and more I hear from successful people that it's just part of the journey. You can't succeed at something, unknown like that without failing. So, continuing on. He returned home with empty pockets, but not an empty spirit. He had learned the value of product quality, branding, and customer loyalty, and he was not done trying. So now we move on to failure number 2, New York City. Most people, after one business failure, would take a safer path. I mean, you hear about that all the time, don't you? And when you're on the path of trying to start a business, you're bound to have a failure. It's not destined that everyone will have a failure, but more often than not, people are going to have a failure. That's just how you grow. So once you have your first failure, a lot of people surrounding you, even people you love, will say, maybe you should take the safer path. So, same thing with him. But did he? Nope, not Milton Hershey. He moved to New York City, the most competitive market in the country, and tried again. This time, he experimented with new techniques and new products. He tried to innovate. He pursued wholesalers. He tried different recipes. But once again, the business struggled. Manufacturing costs were high. Rent was expensive. The market was saturated. Eventually, Milton went bankrupt. So there you go. There's failure number 2, right? All right. He sold his equipment, paid what debts he could, and returned to Pennsylvania once more. Now, most people would have given up by now, don't you think? Failure number 1 and then failure number 2, all the people around you at that point saying, all right, you tried once, you tried twice. Maybe this just isn't for you. And usually they're well-meaning. They don't want to see you fail. They don't want to see you waste all your time. From their point of view, a waste of time. But maybe they just don't get it that the journey is so important. It's hard to explain, isn't it? If you've got it in your heart, you know what I'm talking about. So, as I said, most people would have given up, right? Well, Milton didn't. So now we're on to failure number 3, Chicago. Still determined, Milton headed west to Chicago, where he attempted his third business. He believed he had enough experience now to succeed. Enough lessons learned, enough improvements in his craft. But the third attempt failed as well. Different city, same outcome, another collapse. That's 3 failures. No money, no success to show for nearly a decade of work. Okay, interjection here for a second. Think of that. A decade of work. Now, how are the voices surrounding you gonna be talking? Okay, it's been 10 years, just maybe you're at the family gatherings with friends, and maybe you don't want to bring up your endeavors, your dreams, because they're like, yeah, their eyes kind of glaze over and like, oh yeah, in their mind they're thinking, yeah, here we go again, right? But for Milton, this time something was different. Milton realized he had developed a specialized skill. He had become exceptionally good at making caramel. And that small detail changed everything. So now after those failures, we're on to the breakthrough. Back in Lancaster, Milton decided to start small, very small. That's probably a good thing, right? It's kind of, to back up and, as they say, hey, step back, punt. So, you're moving fast forward and you fail and then fail again and fail again. It's like, okay, are you running full steam ahead again? You think, well, maybe you get discouraged for a while, but then something in your heart says, I got to continue. And maybe at that point, that's when a lot of people say, who refuse to give up. Like, maybe I should just start small. Maybe I was just dreaming, I can still dream big, but I was starting too big, because your ambitions are matching your dream and your actions. And you're thinking, well, maybe if I just start small. So he decided to start small, very small. He borrowed money again, set up a modest workspace, and focused on perfecting caramel making. And at this moment, several pieces fell into place. He perfected a recipe using fresh milk, creating a smoother, richer caramel than anything on the market. He streamlined production techniques. He focused on quality above everything else. And he built strong relationships with local distributors. People loved his caramels. Orders grew quickly. Before long, Milton Hershey founded the Lancaster Caramel Company, and it became a booming success, one of the largest caramel manufacturers in the United States. That's fantastic. I mean, think of that. After all that, it kind of gives you shivers, right? Well, continuing, Milton, after 3 failures, had finally found his breakthrough. But the world was about to change, and so was he. And now we're on to him discovering chocolate. While attending the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago in 1893, Milton watched a demonstration of German chocolate-making machinery. He was fascinated. He bought the equipment on the spot. At the time, chocolate was a luxury, expensive, difficult to produce, and enjoyed mostly by the wealthy. Milton wanted to bring it to everyone. The everyday person, the working family, the farmer, the child. He believed chocolate could be more than a treat. It could be a joyful part of life. So he began experimenting with milk chocolate, a different recipe to perfect. Or I should say, a different and difficult recipe to perfect. Well, he failed repeatedly. Right? Here we go again, right? And what do you think happened along the way? Oh, you're failing again. Maybe you should quit, right? Well, but unlike before, he did not consider these failures defeats, only steps forward. Eventually, he created the smooth, creamy milk chocolate that would become the foundation of his empire. And in 1900, Milton Hershey sold his caramel company for $1 million. Wait a minute. Think of that. In 1900, $1 million. That's a lot of money in 1900. Oh my God. An enormous fortune at the time. And he used the money to focus entirely on chocolate. So now, moving on to Hershey, Pennsylvania. So with his newfound resources, Milton purchased farmland in rural Pennsylvania and built the Hershey Chocolate Company. But he didn't stop there. He built housing for workers. He built schools. He built churches, parks, transportation lines, and recreational facilities. He didn't just build a factory. He built a community. The town of Hershey, Pennsylvania, became known as the sweetest place on earth. It was a bold, passionate idea, a company town built around fairness, opportunity, and quality of life. He believed that workers who were treated well would produce better products, live better lives, and build stronger communities. His belief proved true. And now, we move on to a legacy. Milton Hershey became one of the world's most successful entrepreneurs, but his greatest legacy wasn't chocolate, it was generosity. He and his wife, Catherine, had no children of their own, so they founded a school for orphaned boys, later called the Milton Hershey School. He placed nearly all of his fortune into a trust to support the school. Over decades, that trust has grown to billions of dollars and continues to change lives to this day. Milton Hershey may have failed 3 times, But because he refused to quit, millions of people have been fed, educated, employed, and inspired by his work. Now that's amazing, isn't it? That's the story of Milton Hershey. Isn't that amazing? That is, it, to me, it almost gives you shivers, right? Almost gives you shivers to think about it, and hopefully it will inspire you. You know, there are lessons that we can learn from this, right? Like Milton Hershey's story teaches us several. It does teach us several powerful lessons. One of them is failure is not final unless you stop trying. You know, we've heard that before, but he's another reminder of this fact. More and more you study successful people, you'll see whether it's athletics, art, business, so many different disciplines. And you always hear the best part of the story, right? But if you really get into it, you really hear what really happened personally in their lives. You'll find most of the time, I'd say it's the general rule, actually, that they had plenty of failures along the way, and they just didn't stop trying. And the people who stopped trying, well, maybe they had a good reason. Maybe they didn't. It's all personal, right? Some people stop trying because they just decide, this just isn't for me. Now, that's not failure. So I want to make that clear. I really believe that by life. Some people just, they're on an endeavor like that, and they just stop, and they just realize, hey, this isn't worth it to me. This, I was doing it for the wrong reason. And as they grow older, maybe, or just wiser, or just, more experience along their journey, they realize I was doing this for the wrong reason. I was doing it to make other people happy, to impress other people for something else other than, something positive. They're doing something amazing for a good reason. Something that, because I don't want to say what the good reasons are because it's always personal to you, but it just kind of leave it in a generic fashion that way because it's different for everybody. What's positive for one person is negative for another person, right? What's a right reason to do it for one person might not be the right reason for someone else. So some people just decide this isn't right for me, and they're right. But other people, they just stop because they're just tired out, or they give up because everyone around them tells them to stop, and they just give in because of fear. And when it's wrong, and there's something bugging you inside that says, a little quiet voice that keeps on saying, what are you doing? Keep going. But then and you have to wrestle with it sometimes and say, is this just my ego? Why am I doing this? But then over time, maybe you step away from it for a while, and it keeps bugging you. You're like, why am I doing what I'm doing now? This is not fulfilling. And when you realize that taking a different path, maybe it's a safer path, whatever it is, it's the path that, where you stopped chasing that dream. Something bugs you inside and says, this other path, this alternate path is not fulfilling. Maybe that is something to consider. So if you stop and you realize, hey, you're more fulfilled taking a safer path, quote unquote safer path or an alternate path, and it's more fulfilling, maybe it's the right thing to do. But if you're taking an alternate path because you just keep failing on the one, the dream you were chasing, and you find yourself not fulfilled, well, maybe it's not the right path. The alternate one is maybe it's not the right path because it's not fulfilling. So it's not up to me to decide. Just food for thought. And I'd love to hear your comments on that. Please comment. We need your advice on this. It's very valuable for all of us to learn from all of you. So the other lessons I think we could pull out of this is, I think if you continue and you're failing and your persistence, it creates mastery. Your failure, and then you readjust and continue again, readjust and continue, fail, and then and readjust and continue again. It creates mastery. Each failed business taught him in this story. It taught him something he needed to know, which I think it would teach everyone. So another thing I guess you can maybe pull out of this is that your breakthrough often comes from a specialty. For Hershey, it was caramel, a skill refined over years of setbacks. Another thing, maybe, success is multiplied when you lift others with you. And I think that's really important. I think we hear that from a lot of very successful people who are good-hearted. They didn't succeed by stealing and conniving. Well, we always hear that from like Hollywood movies and all that. And I kind of think because it just, it sells good. Just like with, news that's negative tends to get better ratings. But in real life, I think real people like you and I, we're inspired, by people who give back, who are just regular people. We all identify with each other when we're not trying to pretend that we're better than other people, right? So I like that. I like that thought that success does grow and it multiplies faster when you lift others with you. So there's beauty in that. So another thing maybe we could think is that, great businesses are built on great products, not shortcuts. And these lessons still apply today, especially in the global marketplace and entrepreneurial communities like the one that we're building at Trade Meet Global and Trade Market Global. And, that's what I'm working on. So I don't want this to be all about just that, but I just so you know me and what I'm working on, that's what I'm working on. And I bring that up also, not just to, give my business a plug. Of course, I want to do that, but I want you to be able to give your business a plug. Like I said, this is about a community effort. We help lift each other up. So if you have a story, you have something you want to talk about, you want to discuss, even if it's not a story, you got topics you want to get something off your chest, whether it's negative, you're angry about some business processes, failures, ways you got cheated, or you want to just share your inspiration, your experiences, so other people don't make the same mistakes, or you want to share your successes to help inspire other people. So whether you got a story, or you just have comments, or you just want to create a discussion, we have that's what the platform we built is for. That's called Trade Meet Global, and it's at trademeetglobal.com. And we'd love to hear your stories and your comments. Please help us, create this beautiful community where we can help each other out, inspire each other, educate each other, get together, build a great business community. So you just go to trademeetglobal.com, and it's free. It's a free networking site. And now when you do sign up, it's going to ask you, it has an automatic email, approval thing. It'll send you email verification. So you'll get an email immediately. As soon as you sign up, it does require an email address. And when you put that in, it'll send you an automatic email verification email. Now, you need to click on that. And hopefully, if you find it in your spam folder or whatnot, if you don't, just let us know, and we can have it resent to you. But once you receive that, you just click the verification link, and then you're in. You don't have to wait for admin approval. It's all automated, and ideally is depending on your internet connection. And if everything's working well on your end and our end, then you should be able to ideally just sign up, click submit with your application. It's a quick one, just quick, not a detailed application. It's just your email address, username, all that basic, kind of, there's a few things like that, and you'll see. And just click the verification email, and then you're in. Now go into the site and log into your back office and check it out. And you'll see there's a lot of different, you can add your comments. You'll see it's obvious, like a typical networking site. But look up for something called spaces. You could think of it as groups. On there, it's just called spaces. And you'll see there's different spaces that are already pre-created. There are more coming. But look for the space that's called member stories. So if you have a story, that's where we want you to post your story. And we'll be choosing stories to read from that space. Right now, I'm posting these stories that I'm reading here on the podcast there in the member stories space. So as soon as there are, member stories from you all, from the listeners, then I will be reading those stories. I might not be able to get to read all of them, but I'll do my best. So now there are other spaces, and you can create your own. So we just created a few just to get the ball rolling. If you see some, and it's a global community, that's what we're trying to build, you might see a space that's, there's different that aren't always related to a country, but you might see a few, like Trade Meet India, Trade Meet China, Trade Meet Dubai type of thing, Trade Meet USA. You don't have to post those, but if your country is not represented there, that's just because we haven't created it yet. There are a lot of countries out there, but so as time goes on, we're going to create as many as we can, but you can create your own. You can create your own space and make it private or public. So and it doesn't have to be a country related. It could be just about your own business. You can make it private and have just the people you work with. It's invite only. You'll see in the settings. Yeah, it's pretty nice. You could have a small business and you just want your employees to have a place to communicate. There you go. We don't collect data here on any part of the site except for what is necessary to run the site, and to create a membership. In other words, we're not here collecting all your data to sell it. That's one thing that we're, that we're all about. And we hope that that's attractive to you. You know, a lot of other social networking sites are collecting every move you make. We're not. This is here for you and for us. It's a community effort. So we hope to see you there. Right. You know, and we have some other subjects I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to give some of my own personal stories in the future. I've done it in the past, and even just like some funny moments I had while traveling overseas. So if you have funny moments too, they don't have to be necessarily stories about business. They could be funny moments while you're traveling. You know, maybe you're there for business, but you're on personal time. It could be something inspiring. You're in athletics and something crazy happened, or something sad, something, devastating, or something bad. I don't know, something, but to share it with us. You know, if it's funny too, right, share it. You know, we need all kinds of information. We need to be inspired. Sometimes we need to laugh, too. And sometimes we need to be scared about certain things. So we look and go, okay, yeah, don't make that mistake. You know what I mean? So we're not looking at this as being a typical town hall networking site. We're not going to stop people from doing that, but we're not going to encourage it. You know what I mean? So if you could help out, that would be great. Kind of help out to keep the tone more about success in professions and different disciplines. So it says business, but like I said, it could be athletics, it could be art, at business, global thinking, at economics, finance, your job, things that happen on the job, whether you're the owner or you're an employee, it doesn't matter, or someone else. You're talking about someone else's business. So you'll see it'll develop as it grows, and we'd love for you to be a part of it and to help it get going and help build the actual culture of the online community. So we need you for that. And I think it's a great opportunity because we want you all to be able to guide it in the right direction. We're going to help steer it as well, but we want to do it with you because it's all of us that matter. It's not just the owners. That's why this is going to be different. It might be tough to build, but that's what we're aiming for. So I want to thank everybody for taking the time to listen to today's episode of the Trade Meet Global podcast. And remember, if Milton S. Hershey's journey inspired you, please share your thoughts in our Trade Meet Global social community. And please, again, consider submitting your own member story to, as I said, the member stories space. And please do that to motivate entrepreneurs around the world. All right. So until next time, everyone, keep pushing forward, keep learning, keep improving, because your next attempt might be the one that changes everything. This is Tom Bartow, signing off from the Trade Meet Global podcast. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.